man with the dulcet tones. Okay, next we are going to bring up in order here Allan Heinberg, Tom Sturridge, Vivienne Acheampong, Holbrook, Gwendoline Christie, Jenna Coleman, Kirby Howell-Baptiste, Mason Alexander Karn, and the nephew Samunyai. And of course, Patton Oswalt. He's like the cherry on top of an awesome sundae. Now, this is such an incredibly, massively talented cast. I'd like to start the questions, of course, with our creators here. This has been 30 years in the making. How does it feel to bring your characters to life on screen?
Really good. really good. What I'm really excited about is just the fact that in less than 2 weeks, everybody's going to get to see what we made, and I'm so excited about it, so proud of it, and so incredibly thrilled that it's here. I'm a fan. I love what we've done, so it feels very good.
Comic. How did you go about crafting an authentic adaptation for television? This one will be for you, Allan.
Oh, wow. I did it as a fan. I mean, I was a huge fan of the books, and I was reading them monthly when they were coming out, because I'm old. And in a show about dreams, it's been oddly fitting from the start that this show has been a dream come true from the beginning for me. So I got involved basically at a point where Neil and David Goyer were going to develop it for streaming, and my only condition of joining the team was that I be able to make a Sandman experience that was as faithful to the book as possible, and luckily that's exactly what Neil and David had in mind as well. And Warner Brothers backed us the entire way, and Netflix has been incredibly supportive of that mission. We knew that streaming was the only way we were going to be able to tell this story properly, and the studio and network have backed us the entire way, and we have this amazing cast, far beyond anything I could have dreamed.
I mean, speaking of the cast, how did you go about the casting process? How were the chosen?
Well, first of all, we have Lucinda Syson as our casting director, who's amazing. I'd worked with her years ago on Stardust, and getting to work with her again was a delight. And casting process was sort of different for every single person down on this panel. They were all cast differently. Tom was there in the first email from Lucinda. She sent us 4 audition tapes, and Tom's was obviously the best, and I figured that there would soon we'd have a dozen like him, and you know, he was there, and then we saw another 50 or 60 people, and it was still just Tom, and then we saw several hundred more people, and it was still just Tom. And by the end of the process, I think we'd seen about 1,000 auditions. And poor Lucinda Syson must have seen anywhere between 5,000 and 6,000 Sandman auditions, and it was still Tom. So we cast Tom.
Love at first sight.
And beyond that, people down there. Let's see, Gwendoline.
Clearly a fan favorite.
We just sort of went to her and said, "Do you want to be in Sandman?" And she said, "Yeah." "Want to be Lucifer?" And we went, yeah. That was basically that happened. It was incredibly easy. Jenna was harder. We definitely auditioned a bunch of Joanna Constantine's, and we assumed we would have our pick of people, and there was nobody that we liked. And then I suggested Jenna, having worked with her on Doctor Who a long time ago. And she was amazing, so she got the part. And then we forgot that we'd ever asked anybody because she just sort of occupied our hearts. Let's see, Mason tweeted me.
That's all it took?
That was, well, no, Mason tweeted me, and Mason being very
At
sensible.
Neil Gaiman, I would like...
Basically, they tweeted me and said, has Desire been cast? And who is your casting director? And I thought, it's a very professional sort of question. So I went and looked at their videos and thought, they're really good. And sent a thing over to Allan saying, hey, just thought, this is interesting. Just thought you'd like to know. And then they aced the auditions. They weren't the only person to be auditioned, but they aced it. Kirby was sort of upside down from Tom. Tom was there at the very first, and then we had to watch 1,500 other auditions of people failing to say the lines right. Kirby, we had watched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deaths, and I had not thought saying things about, you know, you're a sorriest excuse for an anthropomorphic personification or this or any other plane would be difficult to say, but it turns out that it's not the easiest line to deliver convincingly. And then we saw Kirby, and we believed her. We believed her as death. We believed that she could actually tell Tom's Morpheus a thing or two and he would listen. And we believed that people would fall in love with death on the screen in the same way that they had in the comics. So we cast her.
Vanesu as well. Vanesu, we read So Many Roses, and the second Vanesu came up on my screen, the computer screen, that there was only ever her. Boyd had a harder time of it. It took, I think it was 6 months between like audition tape and us calling. Yeah, that was a really hard role. Really hard role.
Completely forgot about the project.
Yeah.
That didn't work out.
I heard Patton was the first to be cast.
That is true.
And before he even knew it, he was already in it.
Patton was cast before Allan was on board.
Yeah.
And Patton was cast before we told Patton that he was cast. We just knew that, you know, he would fit into that Raven costume.
Well, he fit into the Ratatouille costume, so it only makes sense that he would fit.
I basically just dyed it black and stuck a beak on it. Like, there's not a lot of, but it worked. It worked perfectly. Yeah.
So, Tom, Dream is not an easy role, and I know that you were a fan of the comics. How did you prepare?
I think the first thing is I care so deeply about this piece of literature. And I think the only way that you can begin to understand them is to subsume yourself in the words and the images that Neil created. And so I just spent months, because the casting process was a long one, reading over and over again until it was in my bones and in my blood. And I think that there is no more honest way to try and find a character than to try and get inside the mind of the man who made it.
Well, I have to tell you, as an insomniac, a sleepwalker, and someone who has a lot of crazy issues with sleeping, a hot gothic guy in a trench coat that can make you sleep on command, pretty much you are my #1 hottie right now. Amazing. You're the only actor that's got to work with everybody on stage, because you were in the entire show. So, I mean, how is it to keep all the stories just cohesive in your brain? How is it to work with everybody throughout the whole series?
I think what's exquisite about our show is that each episode is a different film. It's an entirely different story. But within this cohesive world, and it was so thrilling to every month come to set and meet this extraordinary group of human beings. and to learn and change, and specifically as the character to change. Because the key with our story is that Dream goes on a journey and he becomes someone who he isn't at the beginning. And that change was inflicted by the performances of these wonderful people.
Vivienne, you've got an incredible role as the librarian of dreaming. It's a very unique sort of guardian role, and it spans all of the stories throughout the entire series. What resonates with you about that character specifically?
Oh wow, I love how stoic and still she is, because that ain't me. Quite the opposite to me, and just this bond that she has with Dream, that she, you know, takes care of the dreaming in his absence. And one of the things that I absolutely loved is that she knows every book that has ever been written, every book that has ever been told or even imagined, and I just love that concept. And just the concept of dreaming as well, because I'm someone that really, since I've been a child, has really tried to interpret dreams and what they mean, how they affect us, what our unconscious mind is doing. So I absolutely fell in love. Such a privilege and honour to be Lucy Day.
You're the boss on this. Like legit boss.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Boyd, your character, man. Okay, so how would you describe your scary, scary character?
I'd say the Corinthian is the creation of your worst nightmare in the dreaming world, and then the patron of saints and the serial killers in the waking world.
Yeah, escaped nightmare. Also, I
Wow.
Amazing. The Corinthian, it's got a lot going on this season. Is there anything specifically you're excited for the fans to see?
I have a particular relationship with a character who's not on the panel, played Jed, who was really a surprise the whole time. I can't wait for everyone to see that.
For me, a big surprise was seeing Gwendoline show up as Lucifer. Man, Lucifer turns around, I was like, yes! I'm one of those people who yells at the television. I was so thrilled at this casting. Was that what you had in mind? It's a little different from what I saw in the comic. It feels like an update.
It's a little bit of an update, but I mean, if you go back to the first ever appearance of Lucifer in the comic, I remember finding some photographs of David Bowie as a young folk singer with permed curly hair, and just sending those photographs to Sam, Keith and Mike Dringenberg, who were drawing the comic, and I said, this is the look that we're going for. It's androgynous, it's a junkie angel. This is who Lucifer is. Well, actually, Gwendoline brings the junkie angel in spades. It's a...
Gwendoline, what did you want to bring to the part? Was it Junkie Angel?
I'm a one-stop shop for Junkie Angel. I really was so unbelievably delighted when Allan and Neil came to me about being in Sandman. And we had an incredible conversation. It came about at such an extraordinary point of time where I think this pandemic was just happening, and the connection that I felt to both of them and the material really awakened something in me. Because when I think about the Sandman, when I read the comics, there is an innate, actually it's fantastical, it's intelligent, it's brilliant, it takes you on a hallucinogenic journey. It also has a spirituality in it that is like Star Wars. It takes you somewhere else. You feel like somehow through reading it, the mysteries of the universe will unfold. And it is absolutely our reality as humans through the prism of glorious fantasy. And the idea of being the very essence of evil through these people's eyes was the most delightful moment I could imagine.
Oh, that is so fantastic. Okay, before we go on with more questions, because we have so many incredible panelists here, how would you guys like to see a clip that's for this room only? Would you like to set up this clip?
Of course. So this is a